tonight's Zoning Board of Appeals hearing. Let me introduce some members of town government that assist this board. To my left is Karen Meyer, attorney to the board. To her left is Blaise Donadio, a planner in the planning department. You are all here tonight seeking relief from the Smithtown zoning ordinances, and it's our job to try to help you achieve the relief you are requesting whenever possible. It's up to you to provide this board with precise and accurate information so we can make a decision based on the facts presented tonight. This board must consider the 5 area variance considerations in order to render a decision, and they are as follows. Number 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the variance. Number 2, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance. Number 3, whether the requested area variance is substantial. Number 4, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. And number 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the decision of the board, but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of the variance. Procedures for tonight's meeting. Cases will be called in the order they are advertised. When your case is called, please present your certificates of postings and mailings to Mr. Donadio. Then you will be asked to go to the podium where you'll state your name and address for the record and proceed to tell us why you need your variance. At the end of your presentation, if anyone in the audience would like to speak on your case, they will be given 1 opportunity to do so. Then the applicant can come back to the podium to answer their concerns. Once the public hearing is closed, no further information will be accepted concerning the case. There are 3 ways to find out about your case. You can stay after the hearing, but there's no guarantee that your case will be acted on tonight. You can call the planning office tomorrow afternoon, or you can wait to be notified by mail. We don't have any adjournments tonight, so Mr. Donadio?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first case on the agenda is case number 18522, Christine Collins, 12 Belmar Lane, Comac. The location of the property, the south side of Belmar Lane, 151 feet east of Old Comac Road. The property is zoned R43. The applicant is requesting variances to decrease the minimum distance to a rear lot line from 10 feet to 0 for an existing 18-foot by 34-foot in-ground swimming pool, to increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the front yard from 25% to 44%, which is existing, to increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the side yard from 25% to 95%, which is existing, to increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the rear yard from 25% to 37%, which is existing.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Louis Castellano. I'm here on behalf of Christine Collins and her husband.
Did you submit the necessary paperwork?
Yes, I submitted everything.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
Thank you. Swear me in? You need to swear me in?
No.
Okay. The reason I'm here tonight is for a variance for overpaving of the front yard and side yard, and especially the rear yard. When the home was purchased back in 1999 from Christine's parents. The second reason I'm here is for a pool which is built partially on town property and was CO'd back in 1988. My wife is here to keep me in line. You can see that we have all the paperwork which I handed in, a copy of the survey, a copy of the property card, and a copy of the CO. The pool was obviously inspected and CO'd, and we're here today asking for the board to give us a hold harmless agreement to keep the pool where it is. I've given you photos of existing driveways overpaved in the front yards of adjoining neighbors and several in the development. you have any questions, I'd like to help you answer them.
You're working with the town attorney for a whole harmless agreement.
We have not yet. They told us to do the hearing first, then we would get a copy of what they wanted us to have signed,
Okay,
their format.
but you'll be working on it?
Yes.
Okay. Boom, boom. Not only is the pool over, is the paving over that goes around the pool?
Yes, yes.
So okay. So it's just not the pool, it's the pool and the paving?
Yes. No, it's not. The paving is not. The paving,
Well, if you're going to speak, I have to get
Yeah.
you up here,
Yeah.
please.
the paving is not, just the pool. If you look on the survey, you'll see the outline of the paving.
Yeah, but I'm looking at, there's like two different surveys. One survey, it looks like it's not, and then the other survey, it looks like it goes around.
This is the
But-
newest survey.
Are you going to speak?
No, go sit down. This is the newest survey,
Okay.
which I believe I gave to the board.
All right, that's the newest one?
Yes, I gave you the old and the new.
Okay. So it's just the pool?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe the fence is on the town property also?
yes.
And it says basketball court, was that removed?
That was
or-
removed.
That's removed, so
That's removed, yes.
basketball court was on town
Correct,
property
yep.
too? That was removed? Okay. All right. Anybody on the board have any questions on this application? No? Planning?
No, thank you.
No. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard on this application? No? Can I have a motion to close the application, please? Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you, have a great
Thank you.
evening.
There we go. The next case on the agenda is case number 18549, Brittany Danza, 21 Harbor Hill Road, St. James. The location of the property is the terminus of Three Sisters Road and Harbor Hill Road. The property is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting variance to reduce the minimum front yard from 50 feet to 4 feet, which is existing, on Three Sisters Road, to reduce the minimum rear yard from 75 feet to 13 feet for a proposed 340-square-foot second-floor addition, adding to a non-conforming structure.
Good evening.
Hi,
Could I have the applicant first, please?
I am the applicant, yeah. Brittany, hi.
You just state your name and address,
Oh.
please?
Brittany Danza, 21 Harbor Hill Road, St.
Fine.
James.
Would you like this gentleman to speak on your behalf?
Yes, please.
Fine, thank you.
All righty. Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Todd O'Connell, doing business at 1200 Veterans Highway, Hauppauge, New York, architect for the Danzas. The Danzas have an extremely small house and young couple. They currently have 2 children, and they're looking to make the house a little more suitable for their needs. They currently don't have a bedroom to put their second child in, so part of this is to create a bedroom so they have a place to put their child. This house, being a non-conforming house, yields side yard setbacks that don't meet the current code. It yields a 4.7-foot setback on Three Sisters Road, where 50 foot is required, and it yields a 14-foot setback on the rear, where 75 foot is required. What we're looking to do is to extend up on the back part of the house. This is a Cape-style home, so if you're familiar with like a half-dormer setup, that's what we're doing on the back of this Cape-style home. It's essentially the only way that we could get the space that they would need. There are no alternatives really, other than expanding on the ground level, which would actually, in my opinion, be worse because it's such a small parcel to begin with. I don't feel it's going to have any negative environmental impact. It's in terms of the aesthetics, it's really not going to change anything. We're keeping a very classic look to the house. We're doing a standard shed roof on a cape. which is a very standard New England Cape-style home. So it's going to be within keeping of the surrounding area. Again, so it's not going to create an undesirable effect, and there's really no other way to achieve their goals. And being that the house is existing and I'm not making any of the yards any worse than what's currently there, I felt that this is the most minimal variance that we could request for this board. Thank you. Yes, it is. Very.
The 4 foot, that's really just one corner.
It's one corner, and actually, that's on the ground floor. As I mentioned, on the Cape, we hold this walls in, so it's actually going to yield about 5.7 on the new work.
Thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
I just want to clarify, the footprint of the house will stay exactly the same.
Absolutely. No
Thank you.
change.
Anyone else? No. Planning?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18551, Robert Caligiuri, 264 Landing Avenue, Smithtown. The location of the property, the west side of Landing Avenue, 1,066 feet south of Eckerncamp Drive. The property is zoned R43. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard from 60 feet to 19 feet, which is existing at 35, to reduce the minimum side yard from 24 feet to 20 feet for a proposed 1,493 square foot first floor addition, to increase the square footage for a proposed attached garage from 750 square feet to 852 square feet, to increase the maximum height from 35 feet to 42 feet for a proposed 2,275 square foot second floor addition, to increase the maximum gross floor area of a lot from 20% to 100% due to environmentally sensitive land, to increase the maximum gross floor area within the LWRP corridor to 100% due to environmentally sensitive land, to permit structures within 100 feet from any wetlands, to permit structures within 10 feet of any slope greater than 15% or within the flood hazard zone, to permit environmentally sensitive lands to be altered where depth of groundwater is equal to or less than 10 feet.
Good evening.
Hi. 75 East Main Street, Kings Park, New York. Government. The lot is 95,000 square feet. This is owned by Mr. Caligari's grandfather, his father, and he and his wife live in the house. They have 2 children, young children. And there's not a lot of space. There's no closet space. There's no basement. And they need it for storage. And I just want you to keep in mind the 95,000, which is an unusual size lot. And as far as the character of the neighborhood go, if you drive down the road and look across, the closest house is across the Landing Avenue Bridge. And I'd say it's 200 to 300 feet away across the river. There's another house on the same side of the river that's probably 400 feet away. Government, is this Cuomo doing this? If you look at the house from the front, from across the river, it's obscured by trees as far as the house across the river looking towards it. And if you come down Landing, heading towards Smithtown, the house is also obscured by trees. And it sounds kind of crazy, but this is not going to change the character of the neighborhood. Sweetbriar's in the back. The other house across the river. The other house is 400 or 500 feet away. There's no impact on anybody in any way. We have to come in for the variance, It's not substantial. If you look Pelosi, it won't have an adverse effect on the environment. And there's a lot of depths of groundwater and other things that you read here, but they still have a lot area that's buildable, and their FAR is about 18%, nothing. That's it.
Okay. We were there yesterday. The buffer along Landing Avenue is really dense. That's not going to be affected at all?
Not at all.
Not at all. Buffer's going to remain?
Going to remain.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No question.
No? Planning?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second?
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18552, Annalisa Real Muto, 7 Jackson Street, Nesconset. The location of the property, the south side of Richmond Place, 140 feet east of Jackson Street. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum side yard from 12 feet to 1 foot, to reduce the total side yards from 28 feet to 14 feet for an existing 120 square foot shed, to reduce the setback of an existing 3-foot retaining wall from 3 feet to 1 foot, to reduce the setback of an existing 6-foot fence from the top of an existing 3-foot retaining wall from 3 feet to 1 foot, to increase the height of a 6-foot fence on top of a 3-foot retaining wall from 6 feet to 9 feet.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Nick Romuto. I'm Annalisa's husband. I'm at 7 Jackson Street in Wisconsin.
Okay.
I put the retaining wall in to level my property a little bit in that corner. There's no, it would have a positive impact to me on my neighbors because there's no runoff or anything. The property's not that big. I put the shed where I did, and this is where we're at. Realmuto, R-E-A-L-M-U-T-O.
The retaining wall, does your property slope down, or is the other property higher and comes down to you?
My property sloped down.
Yours slopes down. Okay. It also protects your pool.
Yes.
All right. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application? Tony?
No,
No. Planning?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be, like to speak on this application? No? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second?
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18553, Salvatore Castelli, 265 Smithtown Boulevard, Nesconset. The location of the property is the north side of Smithtown Boulevard, 606 feet west of Mary's Lane. The property is split-zoned NB and R15. The applicant is requesting a special exception to permit an accessory apartment. variance of a special exception standard to permit an accessory apartment to be located on the first floor. Variance request to reduce the minimum required truck loading space from 1 to 0, to reduce the minimum parking setback in the front yard from 6 feet to 5 feet, to reduce the minimum parking setback in the east from 6 feet to 5 feet, and to reduce the minimum parking setback to the west from 6 feet to 3 feet.
Good evening.
Hello,
Could you state your name, please, and your address?
my name is Salvatore Castelli. I'm at 265 Smithtown Boulevard, Wisconsin, New York.
Fine. Thank you.
The reason I'm here is for a change of use from single-family residential to office use. I'm also here for 3 variances for the parking that I worked with planning. Liam Trotta, planning, helped me from the start to get this parking and application started. It's a small office. I'm a local insurance agent. No trucks will service my location. There'll be no need for on-street parking because there'll only be maybe 1 or 2 cars at my location at any given time, and there'll be no minimal impact to surrounding properties. Also looking for the special exemption for the accessory apartment.
The footprint of the existing structure, that's not going to change.
It is not.
It's going to stay exactly the same.
Correct.
Anyone have any questions?
No, thank you.
Planning?
Just to remind the board that planning did prepare a planning advisory report. We did a review of the subject property and a history of any zoning variances that had been approved in the past. And based on our review, we recommended approval of the application.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to speak on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second?
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening now.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18554, Paula Goldberg, 22 Ashley Circle, Comac. The location of the property is the south side of Ashley Circle, 650 feet south of Scarlet Drive. The property is zoned R6. The applicant is requesting a variance to permit a proposed 6-foot fence to abut an existing 18-inch high deck.
Good evening.
Paula Goldberg, 22 Ashley Circle in Comac. What I'm requesting is for a 6-foot fence to surround an existing deck abutting the deck as opposed to the zoning of a 6 to 8 or 12-inch space between the deck and the fence, as is required in Smithtown. The reason I'm requiring this or asking for it is that the space that is left, if I put the fence 6 to 8 inches away from the deck, I've created a ditch that is 18 inches deep and 6 inches or 12 inches wide, which is a danger.
Okay. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thanks.
No, thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second?
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good night.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18555, Jose Luis Oro, 85 Witchard Boulevard, Comac. The location of the property, the north side of Witchard Boulevard, 1,421 feet east of Jill Court. The property is owned R21CL. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum side yard from 16 feet to 12 feet, to reduce the total side yards from 34 feet to 28 feet for an existing 392 square foot roof over patio.
Good evening.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Jose Luis Oro, 85 Witchard Boulevard, Comac, New York, case number 18555. I'm here to ask for a reduction on the side yard from 16 feet to 12 feet, which is a total of 4 feet, and the total yard is from 34 to 28. So I could have my, the accessory structure.
And this is just the overhang.
Yes, just the overhang, sir.
Okay. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You do the same. Good night.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18557, Joshua Wolfson, 95 Ridge Road, Smithtown. The location of the property is the southeast corner of Ridge Road and Plymouth Boulevard. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the front yard setback on Plymouth Boulevard from 10 feet to 0 for a proposed 6-foot PVC fence.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Joshua Wolfson. I live at 95 Ridge Road in Smithtown, New York, and I am requesting, I guess, a zoning appeal to reduce the front yard on Plymouth from 10 feet to 0 feet for a 6-foot PVC fence. With regard to the 5 considerations, in my opinion, I do not believe it would create an undesirable change. All of my neighbors, or at least immediate neighbors, have 6-foot PVC fences, and it would match theirs. We also have a young toddler who is going to be running around, and we need some security, privacy, and just a barrier to prevent her from running out onto Plymouth. Is it substantial? I believe that something like this cannot be achieved in any other way, simply because a 4-foot fence would not provide the privacy and security. They're easily scaled and easily seen over. Any type of hedge would essentially grow over 6 feet and are easily walked through and crawled through. And so the most reasonable option, in my opinion, was the 6-foot fence. Thank you.
Okay. We were at your house the other day. If you're coming down Ridge and your fence is there, if we grant what you're requesting, you're going to really just about pull into the intersection to look down to see if there's cars coming down Plymouth Boulevard.
So some of the things when we were making this proposal we considered, we were mindful of line of sight, and there is a tree on town property right there just before the stop sign that would actually block a lot of the line of sight. But then the fence is far enough where it doesn't block the 30-mile-an-hour street sign, and then there's also 2 other stop signs at that corner as well that when I was kind of mapping all this out and standing on that corner, I didn't, in my opinion, I didn't think the fence was going to block any of that, but I yield to the board for that one.
Okay. It was just an observation. You were there.
Yeah, it's a tricky corner because that
certainly
tree
is,
is there.
yeah.
There's that tree there.
Yeah. Anyone on the board have any questions?
No question.
No, thanks.
Planning?
Just to add upon what you already stated, Mr. Chairman, both you and I were there yesterday morning, and did notice the line of sight issue with a proposed 6-foot fence. The other thing that I think might be a concern is the fact that it's being proposed to abut right up against the sidewalk. So there's really no gap between the concrete sidewalk and the fence. And if for any reason the town does have to come in and do work on the sidewalk, they're more than likely going to damage the fence.
All right, thank you.
I would be open to considerations as have been made in previous requests, if that's something the board would consider as well.
Moving it back a few feet. Okay, we'll talk about it.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second?
Motion has been made to close the application, it's been seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Jimmy Wang.
One second.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18558, American Health Formulations, 45 Adams Avenue, Hauppauge. The location of the property is the east side of Adams Avenue, 1,040 feet north of Oser Avenue. The property is owned LI. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the minimum side yard from 20 feet to 0 for proposed 7,432 square foot, one-story warehouse addition.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Jimmy Wang, the owner of the property at 45 Adams Hauppauge, New York 11788. I'd like to come and present me for this
Certainly.
hearing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Carmine.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Carmine Grasso from Cataldo Grasso Architects, offices at 14 Carl Avenue in Smithtown. I've submitted the affidavits of mailing and posting and the certified mail receipts and return receipts. I represent American Health Formulations in their application for a side yard variance, setback variance from 20 feet to 0 feet for their addition on their warehouse. My client has a pharmaceutical company, and they need the expanded warehouse space to help for their stock and their materials for their business. The proposed addition is 7,432 square feet, and the existing building is 28,000 square feet. The setback variance that we're requesting to 0 feet is actually for the existing building. When I went to the building department to get my denial for this, they found that the existing building is on the property line, but that there would seem to have never been a variance for it when it was built back in the early 80s. So that's what the 0-foot setback is for. The proposed setback for the addition is actually 4 feet off the property line, which would still need a variance, but would obviously be a little better than 0 feet. The reason we're putting the addition where we're putting it is to maximize the parking in the property, and also to avoid the mechanical equipment that is located at the rear of the existing building. As far as the appearance of the addition, it's going to match the appearance of the existing building. It's a split rib concrete block, and that's what's going to remain for the addition. In regards to the area variance considerations, whether there's an undesirable change to the character of the neighborhood, we feel that there's not. It's all industrial buildings in that neighborhood, and this is just going to continue the industrial use, and it's actually going to be set back further from the property line than the existing building. Whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by another method, no, it couldn't. This is the only location we can construct the addition that wouldn't require a parking variance, and it also makes it accessible for delivery trucks. Whether the requested variance is substantial, obviously going from 20 feet to 0 feet, it does appear substantial, but like I had said before, this is an existing condition that's been in place since the early 80s, and the proposed addition is going to be set back further. Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse impact on the environment, We feel that it won't. The building is served by sewers, so the minor increase in sanitary flow is going to be handled by that, so that's not a concern. There's no additional stormwater runoff because the addition is going in a place where there's existing paving. And there's only minimal electric and gas usage due to this addition. And whether the difficulty was self-created, we feel that it's not self-created due to the shape of the property and the location of the existing building. This is really the only place that we can put the addition. If the board or planning department has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
No? Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Sir, come on up. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Tom Ng. I'm from Viacom.
Excuse me, sir.
I'm
Could you
sorry.
State your name.
Oh,
And give your address, spell your last name so we get it correct on the record.
okay,
please.
sure. Yeah, my name is Tom Ng, that's spelled E-N-G. I work at 35 Adams Avenue, Hauppauge, New York, 11788.
Thank you.
So my concern really is just the location of the extension of the, is this going in the back of the building? Is that what it is, where the loading dock is
Excuse me.
now?
Can you address the board?
Oh, I'm sorry.
And we'll get him to come back to answer your
Okay,
concerns. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so, we're a broadcast center, and there is a certain height, I'm sure you're all aware of the height limitations in the industrial park, where certain sections are going to be 60-some-odd feet tall, 62 feet tall. So the concern I was sent here to ask was, how close is it going to be to our property, because we're adjacent to 45 Adams Avenue, we're at 35 Adams Avenue. That's one thing. The height is one thing, and also when any kind of runoff from the building, if it's going to be near our property line. I wasn't sure where the 0 foot came from. With someone said it's going to come right up to our fence line, so I just want to find out about that.
Okay, fine.
That's basically it.
All right.
Those two questions.
Thank you very
All
much.
right. Thank you.
Good. Norm, would you like to come back to answer his concerns?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I can answer those concerns. As far as the height of the building goes, the max height that's allowed is 35 feet. We are, I believe we were at 32 feet. I don't have it right in front of me. So we don't need a variance for the height of the building. Again, we are set back further from the property line than the existing building, so there is going to be a gap of 4 feet between the property line of the adjacent property and the new building. Obviously, any runoff from the roof of this building would have to be directed down into storm drainage below grade, and that would have no effect on his property at all. I believe that was his big concern, the concern of the height of the building. It definitely is, it's not going to be 60 feet. If I recall correctly, it's only 32, maybe 34 feet. It's not, it doesn't even meet the max height of 35 that's permitted.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18559, Michael Ganata, 276 Terry Road, Smithtown. The location of the property, the northwest corner of Terry Road and Stevens Place. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum rear yard from 60 feet to 52 feet for a proposed 194 square foot addition, to reduce the front yard setback from 45 feet to 30 feet for a proposed 280 square foot detached garage.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Mike Gannotta, Gannotta. I live at 276 Terry Road, Smithtown, New York.
Fine. You'd like this gentleman to speak on your behalf?
Yes, I do.
Fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good to see you. For the record, my name is Michael Morbillo, architect. My firm is Nspire Design Group, located at 273 Lake Avenue in St. James, New York. The application before you this evening, as mentioned, is for a proposed kitchen and living space addition, which is basically on the rear of the house. We're a corner lot, and it's also for a detached garage. So I'm going to just start with the kitchen addition. The kitchen addition is basically on the north side of the property. It's adjacent to an existing kitchen, and that addition is basically necessitating a need to reduce the rear yard from 60 feet to 52 feet, which is an approximately a 13% encroachment into the rear yard requirements. The other request is for a detached garage, and that is located in the front yard. It's somewhat their apparent rear yard, but as you know, we're beyond the edge of the house, and so that we basically are in their front yard. Typically, on a corner lot, we run into these circumstances. They don't have a large rear yard. Their other potential location would be on the west side of the property for a detached garage or potentially an addition, but the side yard area is too tight for that. And so that leaves us with a separate detached garage located somewhat in their rear yard, but also protruding into the front yard. Mr. Ganata is looking to add on the garage. Primarily, he's got a lot of cars. He has 2 grown children that have 2 cars. Him and his wife have 2 cars. He also has a collectible 1968 Olds 442, and which was at his parents' or at his mom's house. His mom passed away last year, and her home was sold, so he'd like to keep the car at home and close by to him. So he's looking to add the garage to accommodate that. It also, the back of the garage kind of frames off his backyard, being that he has a patio area and an in-ground swimming pool. The location of the garage on Terry Road, the applicant's property is part of Terry Acres, that whole development that basically runs, it runs south of where his lot. He's sort of at the northeast corner of Terry Acres, so it's all similar types of homes. But just north of his property along Terry Road, there's older homes from some predating zoning that are closer to the street. On average, my guesstimate from aerial information is it's in the 35-foot setback. So I don't know if I have some pictures of aerials with me I could bring up to the board, but primarily the immediate neighbor has reduced front yard setbacks. And you can kind of see it there a little bit on the aerial. To the north is sort of a string of homes that are on the west side of Terry Road. So we're not looking to create an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood. Certainly, the height is going to be limited because this is an accessory structure. So it'll be limited to the maximum 15-foot height. And also the size of it, right now it's a 14 by 20 structure. So we're not looking to have a substantial impact. We're keeping it close to the property line. So we're not looking to create an undesirable change in the neighborhood. We are looking to maximize his rear yard because the yards are limited, being a corner lot. The other thing is certainly we're not going to create an impact on the environment. Any runoff will be handled by a dry well. We don't have, as I mentioned, we don't have any alternatives really for the placement of the garage due to the configuration of the house being on the corner. Certainly, the request is in our opinion, self-created because he's looking to create another spot for a garage. So if the board has any questions at this time, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
So he's going to keep the existing 2-car garage?
Correct.
And add this?
That's correct.
So then you'll have to go for a curb cut on Terry Road?
That's correct, yep. And there is a curb cut, as you can see from the aerial, There's curb cuts in that proximity over there, not looking to create any issues. We are a safe distance from the neighbor's horseshoe driveway, which is just to the north, but it's not uncommon, even across the street, to have a curb cut along Terry Road.
Anyone on the board have any questions?
No, thank you.
No? Planning?
My only comment is that the request for the setback of the garage is reducing the required front yard by about a third. And aside from the older homes that already exist on Terry Road, I don't think any of the homes that were built within the development have a 30-foot front yard setback, so.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard on this application? Do you have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18560, David and Michelle Pittman, 36 Pineland Street, Wisconsin. The location of the property, the west side of Pineland Street, 125 feet south of Magnolia Avenue. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum side yard from 12 feet to 8 feet, to reduce total side yards from 28 feet to 9 feet, for an existing 12-foot by 24-foot semi-in-ground swimming pool with attached 245-square-foot deck, to decrease the rear lot line setback from 6 feet to 3 feet for an existing 200-square-foot woodshed.
Good evening.
Good evening, how are you? My name is David Pittman, P-I-T-M-A-N. Address is 36 Pineland Street in Wisconsin. I am here asking for approval for a pre-existing shed along the back of my property line. It's been there about 15 years. I put a second story on the home and was here 15 years ago. And the builder had extra lumber and said, you want me to expand your shed a little bit and put it right where my grandmother-in-law's shed was, not understanding all the setback laws at the time. So it's a pre-existing shed that's there. The swimming pool was put in a couple of years ago with the attached deck. It's a semi-in-ground 12 by 24 with a wood structure around it. Ignorance or stupidity, not understanding all the rules with swimming pools. I put it in without all of the proper approval, so I'm here to try to make that right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone on the board that has any questions on this application?
No, thanks.
No, thank you.
Planning?
No, thank you.
No. Anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Sir, come on up. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Could you state your name, spell your last name so we get it correct, and state your address, please?
Yes, my name is Peter, middle initial F, capital V-A-N, capital D-E-R-L-A-S-K-E. And I live at 49 Pineland Street, Wisconsin. I live across the street from Mr. Pittman, and I'm 3 houses southerly from his residence. I really just became aware of this a couple of days ago, but I just want to state for the board that I really have no objections to this variance. I'm here to support my neighbor that you guys really give him the variance so that he has a place for himself and his children to play, keep them off the street. Dave has been a very good neighbor of mine for the last 20 years. I remember the day he moved in. I know his in-laws. They've moved in the neighborhood earlier than I have. They keep their property neat and clean, and he's been a very respectful neighbor. And I'm sure that even with the distances that are cut down, he will be very careful with parties and noise and stuff like that. I really see no big impact that this variance has to the neighborhood. Swimming pool would be nice. There is a property up north that has a swimming pool. I don't even hear them. That's really all I have to say. I thank you for giving me the time to speak, and I hope that the board looks favorably upon granting this variance so that he could get along and be an addition to his property. I thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? No one else. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion's been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. He's not here.
Papadakis, and then that may give him enough time.
Yeah. Let me just, I'll make it, we'll move it on. Is there anyone here for case 18556 Medford Forest, Inc.? Or case 18550 155 West Main Street LLC? Right, yeah, he is running late, so I just wanted to let people know what we're gonna do is wait till he gets here. So we're gonna jump to case 1-18523.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. All righty.
Yeah.
The next case is 1-18523, John Papadakis, 158 Lillian Road, Nesconset. The location of the property, the south side of Lillian Road, 390 feet east of Gibbs Pond Road. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to decrease the minimum distance from any lot line from 6 feet to 2 feet for an existing 96-square-foot wood shed and existing outdoor fireplace. Increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the rear yard from 25% to 37% for existing paving.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name's John Papadakis. I'm the homeowner at 158 Lillian Road, Nesconset. My lawyer, John Armentano, will be speaking on my behalf.
Okay, fine. John?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is John Armentano. I'm an attorney with Farrell Fritz, representing the applicant.
John, can you just spell your last name
Yes.
so we get it correct?
Armentano.
Thank you.
And as you know, with me tonight is Mr. Papadakis, as well as our architect, Carmine Grasso, and several neighbors who will speak in favor of this application. As this board is aware, this is a rehearing, and we do appreciate the board reopening this matter to consider additional information that may not have been presented at the last hearing. As you know,
Well, let me just
Yes.
clarify that.
Sure.
Carmine, this was a Zoom meeting, and Carmine wrote a letter saying that I did not let him speak.
That is correct. I
Yeah,
watched
no,
this. Yes,
so-
no, yeah.
So, my mistake, so that's why we're reopening it.
And we appreciate that. And
Thank you.
I did read through the record and observe the Zoom meeting. And again,
Yeah.
we do appreciate our opportunity to be reheard on this matter,
Yeah.
to make comments.
So he'll speak first tonight.
Oh, would you want him to
No,
speak?
no, I'm just kidding.
All right, you throw me all around. So, anyway. So as you know, this is a rehearing. We are here. The board had granted the variances for the outdoor patio and the outdoor kitchen. The denial was for the outdoor fireplace. So in order to have the record be clear, we're going to incorporate by reference the prior hearing. I assume that will be done as part of this record. And as we stated, the hearing was before this board by Zoom on June 8th, 2021. And like you said, the applicant's representative was not given an opportunity to reply. So that's an important distinction as to why we're here tonight. We appreciate that. I did review the transcript and note there were some issues with the neighbors or one or two of the neighbors with regard to the fireplace. So we're going to focus the application in that direction with the understanding that the variances were previously granted for the coverage and the setback and the height for the outdoor kitchen. What was not presented to this board was any facts aside from personal opinions as to the existence of an outdoor fireplace. Another item that was referenced in the hearing was, in the after hearing where you were on the record discussing the determination, was the installation of a spark arrestor. Our architect will speak to that point, but a spark arrestor has been placed in the fireplace, and it is the standard for these types of fireplaces. What I have handed up to you tonight is just a way to refresh your recollection. I'm sure you've been to the site, you've been through the hearing, but in terms of this application, if we just turn to the booklet, it gives you a reference point for the subject property and the surrounding conditions. As you'll note, Exhibit 1 to the booklet is showing the location of the subject property. Exhibit 2 is the prior decision of this board, where it was granted most but not all of the application's requests. The Exhibit 3 is the prior submission by Carmine Grasso detailing all of the various issues. And these are all pre-existing conditions. They were constructed in 2018. So we're looking for permission to continue use of these items. We do, Exhibit 4 does depict, as of 2 weeks ago, the conditions of the site, showing the outdoor kitchen, as well as the second page of Exhibit 4 is the outdoor fireplace set into the corner. And there's another photograph of that as well, giving you the context of its location. If we turn to Exhibit 5, these were some pictures taken, and this one is looking south towards 23, I guess it's Grice Avenue, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but that is one of the surrounding properties to the south. Noting clearly, there's dense foliage, and there's also a shed setback within the 2-foot setback. If we look to the west, to 16, that's the Exhibit 5, 126 Lillian Road. That is the neighbor who is also the adjoining property to the fireplace, and you'll note that his property does have a fire pit, so there are fire uses in the area, and I will get to the importance of that in a few minutes. The next page of that Exhibit 5 is looking south towards 21 Grice Avenue. That was taken from the property basically at the height of the chimney. So you can see, what's in the backyard of Mrs., I think it's her last name is Benacasa. I may be mispronouncing that, but that is one of the neighbors who appeared before this board last time. Exhibit 6 are the letters of support that were submitted in support of this application, and you will hear from some of the authors of these letters after our presentation. And then an important item is Exhibit 7 is a grant of this board back in March 11th of 2020, which was for case number 18310, which was for an Alex Breslin in Comac. And it was a grant very similar, if not identical, to what this board approved in 2020. And if I can draw your attention to the third requested variance that was approved by this board, it was to reduce the minimum distance from the rear yard from 8 feet to 1 feet for an existing pavilion with fireplace. So that is basically the same thing we are requesting for Mr. Papadakis. I did include the record that was before this board for that application. It does clearly show a very similar fireplace to what we are requesting a variance for. And the setback, if you look at the last page of that exhibit, or the second to last page, does show the location of the fire pit in, I'd say, an almost identical location to our application today. It is set back by 1 foot, and that is the pavilion and fireplace. There's a picture of that in the record. Part of this application and what was presented before this board was also a request for an interpretation in that there's a conflict, we believe, in the code with respect to the location and the requirements of a setback for a structure that is an accessory structure. Now, if this was a shed, it could be placed within 2 feet of the setback. The code speaks about things that are 150 square feet and under 10 feet. This this fireplace is clearly less than 150 square feet and less than the 10-foot in height. So we are, in the alternative for asking for the variance, we are requesting that the board make a determination as to whether or not the fireplace falls within the code requirements for setbacks for buildings or setbacks for structures, because the code is not clear, and when there's a conflict in the code, that should fall to the applicant's benefit. And we believe that therefore the code, we could have this fireplace built without permit in its present location. That's an aspect of our application seeking that interpretation. In the alternative, if the board does not consider there to be a difference, then we are requesting the required area variance necessary to maintain this outdoor fireplace. The issues then turn to, what is the balancing test and how does that apply to this application? If we consider the use that is here, the conditions have remained unchanged since 2018 with no adverse impact to the community. There has, from what I understand and also reviewing the record, there had been a complaint regarding a smoke issue, and the fire marshal was called and did not issue a violation, and nor has one been issued to this day. So I think that goes to the condition that there is not a health and safety issue here. I believe, in keeping with the character of the community, this is not out of place. The use of outdoor fire pits is becoming an up and coming use. That's how people are modernizing their outdoor lifestyle. The code actually speaks to outdoor fireplaces in its common uses, and it does state that is required, and that is one of your documents that's on the town code website. It says that a permit is only required, or a permit is required, but it must meet the setbacks for accessory structures, and that's to the point I was saying is really a 2-foot setback, and the maximum height is 15 feet. We are under 10 feet, and there is no gas or propane, so therefore there is no need for a fire marshal permit. This is a wood-burning fireplace, and so that's what we're proposing to use it for in the future. In considering that type of use, this is because there has been no fire marshal issue, there does not appear to be any environmental or safety concerns associated with this use. The fireplace has been used in the past and recently with no adverse impact and no issuance of a fire marshal violation. So I think that goes to the point of the existing conditions have not been exacerbated. There have been no supported claims of this problem, but for a neighbor who has an issue with the location of this property, with this use on the property. And it seemed to be that it may have swayed the board in making its determination, although I know the board takes its job very seriously and balances these facts in consideration with everything else that's involved here. The reality here is that if the fireplace was moved to a 6-foot setback location, it could exist without the variance. And I think we're in a fork in the road here as well, because so that issue is a 4-foot setback. So it really goes to the substantial nature of this application, which is minimal at best. And to the extent that 4 feet would make a difference, I would submit that it does not make a difference when you consider the use of the property and what is there. There really is no feasible alternative. It would be a costly endeavor to remove this. This is a prefabbed system, but it's now been set in stone, so it's very challenging to move or relocate this. So we would consider there to be no feasible alternative to this location. Again, as I had stated, this is not a substantial variance if you consider the setback requirements for accessory structures. If you could think of the hypothetical, I could put a shed at the 2-foot line and heat it with a wood-burning stove with the stovepipe, and you would have the same effect. So I think that should balance with the board's consideration as to the fact that this is an outdoor fireplace. If this were to be, or if we were to propose a shed with a wood-burning stove, it could be placed in this exact location, and none of those impacts would be altered. So I think that's something the board should consider when they're evaluating this application. Again, turning to the environmental conditions, the secret determination rendered by the planning department is that this is a type 2 action, which means there are no adverse impacts to the environment. So I think that's another consideration to be taken by this board. And again, we have the self-created hardship, as the board knows, it can be weighed in favor or against the applicant. We would request, that's not a negative that should be weighed in the very strong balancing of a negative for the applicant. So, although self-created, there are many self-created hardships. We are aware that this was built without permits. I would submit that we are here seeking your forgiveness for this application, as is the case in many applications before this board. And I'd like to bring Carmine up just to speak to some technical points. I can answer any questions that you may have. I think we could.
I just have
Sure.
one clarification. Your handout 7, case number 18310 that was approved, that's a gas fireplace, ventless.
But I understand
not
that.
wood.
Yes.
I'm
that-
just for the record, so,
Yes.
we compare things.
That is important. I think then that is a distinction. I'm not sure there's a distinction with a difference. I understand gas would burn, quote, cleaner, but the issue then is the structure itself is what you should be considering. I'm not aware of many area variances that consider smoke as a variance or the type of smoke. I did a little research, and I did not come across any area variances that dealt with that distinction. So I think, in my opinion, as a land use practitioner, that is a distinction with not a difference. I don't think that is something to make the difference, because you should be considering the structure itself, not what it is emitting. I think that is something the board should weigh. And like I said, in that hypothetical example that I've given you, a shed with a wood-burning stove could be in this exact location. The smoke would be wood, and there would be nothing that the board could do. That would be as of right. I could do that. So the issue then becomes, I don't think smoke should be should be weighed strongly by this board. I think that's a slippery slope to go down. We do have a spark arrestor, so the concerns, if there are any, about sparks and that type of an event, which would be different from a gas-fired stove, which you would not have the spark issue. The spark arrestor has been installed, and we would welcome the fire inspector, the fire marshal, to inspect. He has been on site and has found no violation. So I think that is a good point. I just want to make a clarification and a distinction on that point.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Should I introduce myself again?
Please.
Carmine Grasso from Cataldo Grasso Architects. Offices at 14 Carl Avenue in Smithtown. Just to go further from what Mr. Armentano is saying, a spark arrestor has been installed on the fireplace, and the object of a spark arrestor is, what it does is it eliminates embers, sparks, or any flammable debris from coming out of the chimney. It's a stainless steel mesh, basically stainless steel mesh that goes around the top of the chimney, and it prevents anything from coming out. Obviously, smoke will come out through there, but any fireplace, wood-burning fireplace or fire pit will have smoke coming out of it. I would also like to add a little more to what he had said regarding the location of the fireplace. The fireplace itself that we're dealing with has 2 wood storage units on either side of it, and those are the parts of the fireplace that are actually within 2 feet of the property line. If you look at the fireplace part itself, the wood-burning part of the fireplace, that is actually 5 feet from the rear property line. Excuse me, that's actually 3 feet and change from the rear property line, and same on the side property. The top of the chimney, the part of the chimney that actually has the smoke coming out of it, is 5 feet from the rear property line and 5'4" from the side property line. So if you were to take the setback of 6 feet that's required, it's only a matter of a few inches on one side, like 8 inches on one side and a foot on the other side, that it's actually closer to the property lines than what's permitted. We feel that moving the fireplace would not have an effect on smoke coming out of it. No matter where it is in the property, smoke is going to come out of the fireplace, and whatever direction the wind is blowing, that's where the smoke is going to come out. So if you have any questions regarding the smoke arrestor, spark arrestor, or any other parts of the fireplace, I'd be happy to answer.
Did you design the fireplace?
No, I did not. It's a prefabricated thing. It was in place before I was involved in the
Do you
project.
know how big the firebox is?
I'd have to check my measurements. I don't know offhand. If you give me a minute, I could probably find it.
I was just wondering if there's a correlation between the size of the firebox and the height of the chimney.
I know it's designed so that the chimney has to be a certain height to
Right.
prevent any kind of stuff from blowing out of the top of the chimney. So that's why the height of the chimney is what it is, but I don't know offhand what the correlation would be between the two.
Okay, I'll look at the plans.
Okay.
How efficient is the spark arrestor?
It's that they're installed on chimneys all over, wood-burning fireplaces and chimneys and houses, and that's what they're meant to do. They stop any embers and ash and stuff from coming out of the fireplace. So it's, I don't know if I could say it's 100% efficient, but it's, it's,
99
that's what it's meant to do. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone
Anybody else on the board have any questions?
I don't think for Carmine. I think you just wanted to kind of comment about the spark arrestor, correct?
Yes.
I had a couple questions. I noticed in Exhibit 5, 23 Greece Ave, or Grice Ave, you had brought to our attention there was a shed, I think, at a couple feet from the property line.
Yes.
Do you know if that shed had the benefit of a permit or a variance?
It does have a variance, yes, I have
You
researched
wouldn't
that.
happen to have that number, would you?
I can check my file. I do know that it had received a variance.
Okay, that was question one. Second one, I also noticed, as Chairman Benz did in the 18310 application, that the pavilion and fireplace, I see in the site plan or survey that the pavilion goes to 1 foot, and that it seems that the fireplace is significantly further away from the property line because it is in a similar type of situation where it is catty corner. And I also did notice that it was ventless, and not only ventless, there is no chimney. There's a metal cap on the top of that one. So I just wanted to draw that distinction between the two. It's debatable whether this board should be looking at impacts that the structure may cause, but the reality is this board does look at impacts on neighbors regardless of what a structure is. A certain type of structure can have a bigger and more significant impact on a neighbor, and that's just one of those things that we do weigh when looking at area variance considerations. And the third thing I wanted to just bring up to your attention, and I'm not sure of the method that it needs to happen, but if you're requesting that the board look at it not as an accessory structure, I believe you have to petition the building department to request an interpretation. We can't just do it on the fly. It has to be a separate application requesting an interpretation of the building director's determination that it is an accessory structure.
I do understand that point. Just to clarify, just to go back to the exhibit, I believe that the fireplace, although it is gas-fired, it does sit in the catty-cornered position. So the chimney of that fireplace is in the back. It does seem to sit at the back corner, from what I can tell from the photographs. I did not inspect the site, but if you look at the design, the pavilion, to me, is the 4 posts of that pavilion are picked up on the survey, and the fireplace is behind it. So I do think it is tucked in a very similar pattern.
It is, but I
Yeah.
see that as well, but you'll see in the drawing that was submitted with that application, it specifically points to 1 foot at the pavilion corner, not at the fireplace corner.
Correct.
So I just wanted to draw that distinction because I think it is, while there's similar applications, I think that this fireplace actually sits 6 feet from the property line, where that pavilion is what's 1 foot.
That may be, I don't have a scale. I
Yeah.
do think it's close, and we can,
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that to your attention because you
Understood.
submitted it. And then with the interpretation, I would defer to planning or building to because if you are asking that, I don't know that it is possible for us to do an interpretation without that official request coming in as a separate application. Or part of this one, I'm not sure.
I do understand your point. You know, we were brought into, this was brought in as a rehearing, so I'm kind of locked into that box. I do know that the record did reflect statements by Carmine to that point, that he did not know why they were here for this relief. To me, that is an interpretation request. It may not be in the most formalized aspect I think the board may want to take leeway. If not, that's fine. Then
I
in
don't,
your-
I don't know that we can. I mean, I would defer to our counsel or the town attorney to tell us that we can do that or can't do it.
I think that's a jurisdictional issue. I don't think that's before the board.
Okay.
I agree that it needs to be a separate application.
Okay, then we can address that if necessary. So obviously, we're here for the variance, but for the purpose of the hearing, to consider the aspects of what is required for this structure, I think to not belabor the point as to an interpretation, I think the board can still consider the conflict within the code with respect to structures versus buildings, and that's what I would request the board to take notice of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Planning?
I would like to add one thing on the record, Mr. Chairman, with regard to Mr. Armentato's comment regarding the board not taking into consideration odor or smoke or anything of that nature. The ordinance, Chapter 322, does have sections that deal with odor, noise, vibration, things emanating from the inside of a building or from outside of a building. And it does fall within the board's purview that from time to time, when an application comes before the board and there is an issue of noise, vibration, odor, or what may have you, that could impact adjacent properties, the board does take that into consideration when making a determination.
Thank you.
Understood. I'm sure you'll hear from some members of the audience which do not have any adverse impact because of that, so.
Right. Are you finished, sir?
Yes, I am, yes.
And then I'll open it up now
Sure.
to them.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone in the audience like to speak on this application? All right, one at a time, come on up, please. I'm going to ask you to state your name, spell your last name, and give your address, please.
Good evening. My name is Matt Starantino, Starrantino. I reside at 162 Lillian Road, which is the property adjacent to John. I'm just here to let the board know that I have no issues with any of the home improvements that he has done to his backyard, including the fireplace, which is directly on my property line. It has not caused any negative or hazardous conditions to myself or my family. That's all.
All right.
Thank you.
Come on up, please. Good evening.
Good evening.
Same thing, state your name, spell your last name, give your address, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Mary Beth Bonacorsa, Bonacorsa, and I live at 21 Grice Avenue, Nesconset, New York. And actually, Mr. Papadakis' fireplace is right on top of my property line in my backyard. And I object to the conditions of the variance for the same reasons that I objected the first time around on June 8th. The first is that it is a fire hazard. That fireplace is built within 3 feet of my property line. It's a massive structure. You have the pictures with a flat top and open sides, and ash, embers, smoke, heat. They're in direct line with my trees, my shrubs, my fence, and my property in general. That fireplace is a public safety hazard, it's a fire hazard, and it's a detriment to my property. And my property will catch on fire. Now, I did witness Mr. Papadakis had a spark arrestor put in the fireplace a couple of weeks ago. I actually watched it because it's right on top of my property line. And basically all they did was pop the top off, put this little screen in, and pop the top back on. It was like an attempt at a temporary fix. It wasn't a permanent fix. A permanent fix would be to move that entire structure at least a minimum of 6 feet away from the property line. Now, the next, it's a fire hazard. I mean, it's a health hazard. I am unable to be out in that backyard. There is no way you can be out there with the smoke that comes out from that fireplace. It is toxic. It is black, acrid smoke. I know Mr. Papadakis says he burns only wood in there, but the only way that I can describe to you what it is like, it's like having an incinerator in your backyard. It is awful. It is disgusting. I have allergies. I have respiratory issues. I can't be out there. I've had to move people from my backyard, my guests, into the house because my people had ash, and embers all over the place. They had ash on top of them, in their food, in their drink. It was disgusting. It should not be allowed. You know, the bottom line is, I should not have to have the freedom of use of my property taken away because someone ignored all the rules of the town and decided to put this structure wherever they felt like putting it. The next is that it's an eyesore. I mean, this is what I look at every day. I look at this structure when I'm doing my dishes out my window. I look at it as when I come out my back door. People come into my backyard and go, oh my God, what is that? Why is that structure built right on top of your property? You know, Mr. Papadakis stated in the first hearing that he put it there because he wanted to maximize his property. You know, he wanted to get the most space out of his property. Well, that didn't give him the right to infringe upon my property. It really didn't. And honestly, a fireplace of that magnitude should not be allowed to be built so close within a neighbor's adjacent property line. Again, where there are shrubs, trees, fencing, you know, I'll do whatever it takes to protect my property and my safety and frankly, my peace of mind. And I really need the same protection from the town. As far as I'm concerned, my neighbors and I, absolutely nothing has changed since the last hearing 2 months ago when the variance was denied. You know, the real issue here is obviously Mr. Papadakis does not want to move that structure. But unfortunately, you know, he should have followed the rules in the beginning and that structure wouldn't have been built there in the first place. You know, the rules are put in place to protect people like me. And, they talk about, oh, well, the fire marshal, hasn't been called, it's been fine. That's the furthest thing from the truth. He hasn't been able to use that since this whole hearing started, several months back. The reality is this, that I can honestly say none of you in this room would want that fireplace in your backyard. Nobody would want it right on top of their property. Nobody would want to live in fear that there was going to be a fire in their backyard. Nobody would want to live with that constant health hazard. It's disgusting, as I said, that black acrid smoke that bellows out the sides right into my property, direct line into my property. And no one should have to live with having the use of the freedom of their property taken away from them. It's not right, and it's not fair. And I beg the consideration of this board. This is my life, and this is what I live every day. And it's disgusting, and nobody should have to live like that. I appreciate all the consideration taken in this matter.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Good evening.
My name is John Warren, 173 Lillian Road, Wisconsin.
Spell your last name, John.
W-A-R-R-E-N.
Thank you.
I'm across the street and one house over.
Okay.
Just first make a comment about what was just said. If the smoke was billowing and it was so horrendous, moving the fireplace 4 feet to be within the code wouldn't make a difference. I don't understand, where there would be an issue. But that said, John has been a neighbor of mine for 6 years since he moved in. He's made tremendous improvements to his home. As a matter of fact, even though the house was relatively new when he moved in, it was, 10 years old, I think, or 12 years old, it was in horrible condition. There was even squatters in and out of it. So having John there is a great pleasure and privilege. He's done a lot of major improvements to the home. I'm retired. I'm outside frequently. I've never seen smoke from his yard. I don't think I've noticed even one party or gathering at his house. So I don't have any problems with a variance for this, and I hope you could approve it for him.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Good evening.
Castellano, Castellano, and I live directly across the street from John at 175 Lillian. And I, too, am just here to support him. I believe that what he has done has made an improvement to the entire neighborhood. He's very rarely outside. I don't see him having any parties or gatherings, so I have not seen any smoke bellowing either. I think what he's done to his house is just a very nice improvement to the neighborhood, and I just support him.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Last time, anyone else? Sir?
Thank you. I just want to respond to some of the comments that were made by Mrs. Benacasa. You know, some of this is based on unsubstantiated facts. Nothing that she has said has been proven. I think the board has to consider that. We have fire marshal inspection of the property. It did not result in a fire code violation. I think that should speak volumes as to the issues that are being created here. We would welcome another fire marshal inspection. The fact that we have put in, the fire arrestor is not, a spark arrestor is not a complicated device. It is a screen. I mean, I think Carmine spoke to that point. It is a screen that catches the ash before it leaves. The whole point of it is to stop the ash from leaving. Smoke will be there. That's obvious. Smoke will be from your own wood-burning fireplace. If you, in the fall, are outside, you will smell your neighbor's fireplace. It is the smell you will note. We have no proof of bellowing fires. This is not a furnace. He's not smelting iron here. I think we are exaggerating the concerns beyond what should be considered by this board. I do understand concerns that have been raised here. Health and safety has been addressed by the fire marshal once before. We would welcome that inspection again. That is not something that we would fear, and we would encourage that. I don't think that we are dealing with the type of situation that is being portrayed here. There are other properties in the vicinity directly behind Mrs. Benacasa. There is a wood pit, there's a fire pit. This same type of smoke would emanate from that use. That is not adversely affecting her life. The fact that she can see it is a reality. We understand that. But the height, it can be 10 feet high. So the height should not be a consideration. The height is not an issue before this board. The variance is merely the setback of the structure, not the height. So the height, the concept that you can see it should not be weighed by this board. It is not a variance that is before this board, and it should not be given any weight by this board. Again, the reality is we could put a shed here of the same size. I do have, Mrs. Benacasa had a variance granted for her property. I'll submit that as well. It was for a shed. She has a structure that is 10 feet off her property line. It is not against my client's property line, but it is against the side yard property line. So we all need variances, and we're here before this board to seek the relief that is necessary. But I do want to focus the board's attention on the issue, again, that height is not before it, and the fact that there will be smoke does not necessarily equate to the fire that we are concerned about. I think it's not always the case that you're going to have a health and safety issue. And again, I think the fact that the fire marshal visited this site and found no violation speaks to that point very directly. I appear before many boards, and we represent many boards as zoning council. And I always try to caution the board to consider what it's being asked and what it is to weigh. And I would encourage this board to weigh what the facts that are before it tonight and consider these issues. I also know that the fire marshal is aggressive, and we've handled cases in district court with the fire marshal. They don't back off if there is a problem. There hasn't been a problem here. There won't be a problem. And if a condition of this approval would be to have the fire marshal sign off on it or somehow be conditioned, however the board sees fit, that it is approved under the fire marshal code or the state building code, we would welcome that. That's not something, we do not want to create a problem. Mr. Papadakis would not like to have the issue of his neighbor's house catching on fire. That's not what a good neighbor would do. This is not what that issue is about. I think there's animosity that takes place and goes beyond this issue. And I think this is now the forum to air those grievances. I know this board has seen many hearings like this before. I don't need to belabor the point, but I think some of the grievances here are for other reasons, and this just happens to be a weak point.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, everybody gets one opportunity. All right? Have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. We have two more. Mr. Tramarko. How are you, sir?
All right. All right. The next case on the agenda, case number 18556, Medford Forest, Inc., Oak Run, Wisconsin. The location of the property is the southeast corner of Oak Run and Westminster Road South. The property is zoned R15. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard from 35 feet to 34 feet on Oak Run for a proposed 2,942 square foot, two-story single-family dwelling with 460 square foot attached garage. To reduce the minimum side yard from 16 feet to 15 feet for a proposed 3-foot by 7-foot concrete stoop.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tramarko. I represent the applicant. First of all, I'd like to thank the chairman for putting me on the end so that I could finish up something somewhere else. In any event, as you can see, this is a new lot created by a subdivision. It was called Leonard or Leonard Platt. My client, Patelli Homes, bought it, and the house that they're under contract, subject to, of course, the board's approval, to build a house which needs two variances, both 1 foot. And the reason why it's 1 foot, yes, you can look at the site plan. You can see it's a long, narrow lot. It has 2 front yards, and the best we could do was push it as close as we could to Westminster and create a backyard in the on Oak Run, which is the only place where the property can be used for pools and things of that nature. We don't feel that this is a big change in the character of the area. Actually, Oak Run was developed initially a few years ago, and my client also was building on the other lot across the street, and they're actually continuing in this new neighborhood, which we think, again, it's a 1 foot variance, and if you look at the dimensions of the lot, that's what is requiring us to come to the board. Can this be achieved by some other method? I guess we could make the house narrower, but believe it or not, when you shrink it a foot one way and a foot the other way, it really takes away from the ambience of the house and the way it's to be set up on the property. Whether the requested variance is substantial, obviously, in this case, it's not substantial. It's a 1 foot variance. Again, look at the configuration of the lot. So really, this is the only way we can do this and build the house that my client's contract vendee would like. Whether there's any adverse effect on the environment, it's the same house if it was a foot less on both sides, the same health department, sanitary requirements. So it really has no adverse effect on the environmental conditions. Was the difficulty self-created? Not in the sense that this lot can only be created the way it was based upon the narrowness of the property. So when Mr. Leonard or Leonard did this map, this was really the only way he could develop this lot, is to make it narrow and long. So we asked the board for its favorable consideration. If the board has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Sure. Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application? No. Planning?
Thank you.
No. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Motion's been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18550, 155 West Main LLC, 155 West Main Street, Smithtown. The location of the property is the northeast corner of Main Street and Elliott Avenue. The property is zoned CB. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard from 10 feet to 0 on Fairview Avenue, reduce the distance to the east property line from 5 feet to 0 for an existing 542-square-foot detached garage, to reduce the minimum parking setback on Fairview Avenue from 6 feet to 0, to reduce the parking setback to the east and south property lines from 6 feet to 0, to reduce the minimum parking spaces from 98 to 23, a variance of a standard to extend the hours of outdoor dining from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., to reduce the setback from the curb line from 10 feet to 6 feet on Main Street, to reduce the setback from 10 feet to 0 on Elliott Place, to reduce the distance of outdoor dining to a residence district from 150 feet to 125 feet for 3 proposed outdoor dining areas totaling 2,500 square feet.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tremarco. I represent the applicant. By the way, we submitted the affidavits of posting and mailing to the planning department this afternoon on this case and the previous case. I guess most of us remember this place as Angelo's Pizzeria. We all went there many times on a Friday night and enjoyed the pizza and the Italian food. Prior to that, it was called, I believe it was called the Brooklyn Hotel, and maybe Mr. Valentine remembers that. The Brooklyn Hotel, and even with Angelo's, they had apartments upstairs, and they rented rooms. And those rooms, you know, there was, maybe a common bathroom for every 5 rooms. I'm not sure. I think there were 9 rooms total. Okay, so this applicant purchased the property. He wants to do a restaurant, and in order to do this restaurant, there are obviously a multitude of variances for this to economically make sense for my client. One of the good things, of course, is they eliminated all the apartments upstairs. It'll be totally a restaurant. Actually, when he first came to me, he said, I want to do this and that. And I said, that's fine, but you know, you're going to lose the income from those 9 residents. And he said he'd rather not be that type of a landlord. So he, and his name is Bill Johnson. You see the applicant, you know, as an LLC. But he did a multitude of work on the property just to get it to conform structurally. Actually, we went there one day. We met with Peter Hans and Liam Trotter and went through the whole building. One of the things he did, because of the, I guess it was built around the turn of the century, the foundation was caving, so he actually put new walls around it inside and then filled it. So he eliminated the basement, made the first floor on a slab, and also had to do tremendous structural construction just to bring the building into conformity with the present codes. So we didn't just willy-nilly come up with these variances. We did meet, as I said, with Peter Hans and Liam Trotter. We walked through the whole building. I actually have Tom Vopis, the architect, who's on staff with Mr. Johnson's companies, and he actually designed all the structural situations, I guess, that, that had to be done in order just to bring it up to code. One of the variances that you see, and it looks really severe, is the parking variance. However, there's public parking right there on the other side of the railroad track, and there is also some parking on the street. The other requests are for outside dining. Actually, part of that second floor will be used for outside dining. We talked to planning, and planning said, well, you know what, we want certain windows. We agreed to put a certain type of window around most of it, so that when we're done, provided the board grants us these variances, we're going to take a building that was probably, I don't know how long it was vacant, but I think it was at least 3 or 4 or 5 years, and make it another spot in town which has been improved and will be a credit to the town. Again, I have to emphasize that we did meet with the town and went over all of the variances that were required in order to maintain the restaurant facility. It'll only be a restaurant. It'll never be used again well, it's a non-conforming use that we're going to give up, so we couldn't get it unless we came to this board, which I'm sure they would never grant. So I don't know if planning has some comments, but we did meet with them, and they seem to be okay with everything that we've applied for. Mr. Vopis is here if you have any questions, but we worked all of this out with meetings with the planning department. Tom, do you have anything you want to say?
Unless the board has any questions, I think.
Well, could you
Vinnie did it.
introduce
sorry.
yourself, please?
Thomas Volpes Jr., architect.
Could you just spell your last name? So we
V
get it
as in
correct?
Victor, ULPIS.
And your address, please.
7 Crystal Brook Hollow Road, Port Jefferson, New York, 11777.
I have a question for you, Tom. What structural construction did you do to the building to make it safe?
Well, basically, the building was in really bad shape. The foundations and everything are so old, from like the 1800s, that they were failing. So Bill went in there and he excavated around those foundations on the inside and poured concrete in it to stabilize it. But all of this work that's proposed is going to be, we're going to go to the building department and get permits for everything that's shown on the drawings. So right now, he went in, he did that work. He actually got a stop work order. So he pretty much stopped, where he is, and we're looking hopefully to get the variances for the exterior work and then go ahead and apply for the building itself.
Right.
As far as outdoor dining goes, in today's market, without outdoor dining, people are hesitant to sit inside, so that's why he's applying for the outdoor dining downstairs and upstairs to try to, keep this business surviving.
The upstairs dining, that's on the roof.
Yes, it's on that part of the building is opposite of where the auto body shop, and it's an
Right.
existing roof, and it has a railing around it that's 3 feet high. So the railing, so from upstairs, you'll go outside and you could sit on that outdoor roof.
Structurally, you had a,
We're gonna redo everything. Now, we haven't touched any of that structure yet. It's really pretty much the foundation that we touched, but that whole building is gonna get, all the floors are gonna get replaced. We're putting in some new windows, but you really can't even walk up on that second floor right now. It's a hazard. So all of that whole second floor deck is gonna get replaced with steel and new wood.
okay. The garage, the existing garage, what are you gonna do with that?
He's gonna rebuild it to match the building. He hasn't touched it yet, but we talked with Liam and Peter Hans and that's a request that whatever the building looks like with all the siding and everything, he's gonna make that look the
Yeah,
same.
'cause
He's
it's
gonna
pretty bad
reside the
shape
building.
now.
Yeah, very
Yes.
bad shape.
And he's gonna use it, what, for storage?
For storage, yes. Yep. Because we did get rid of the basement that was there. Well,
Okay.
one basement's gonna stay, the bigger basement got filled in.
All right. Anyone on the board have any questions?
A couple things. I think we recall this application was from a prior application. I believe it was a couple times before us. Essentially, the structure itself, footprint, is remaining the same.
Correct. Yeah, no increase.
I don't see a significant difference in the site plan in terms of
Yeah,
parking from
all
what
of
has
that-
existed
all-
forever.
Yeah, that parking has been like that through every tenant that's been there. Because of the size of the building, that's, it requires a lot of parking, so we're gonna go for the reduction in parking. But you could walk right behind that garage, there's a very big
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
parking lot there.
And also the proposed outdoor dining, with the exception of the roof, is similar to what it has been used for in the past.
I'm not aware of the, Croxley's or anybody else that had outdoor dining, but Bill, the owner, is suggesting that we, try to provide outdoor dining to try to keep this.
I recall the outdoor dining. Was that on the prior application?
I'm not sure if it was on the prior application, but I believe that there was in fact some outdoor dining on the site. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't
I
believe
recall there
so.
was some encroachment on the MTA property, I think, that was causing an issue.
I was actually the architect for Croxley's, but after it was built, I never went back.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
We've been there a long time ago, but not in the 1800s.
That building is from the 1800s,
Some-
right? Oh, yeah.
We were there with Angelos, yeah.
Anyone else have any questions? No? Planning?
As Mr. Tramarko said, they have spent a lot of time with the planning department going over the proposed site plan, the work to the building. It is a historic site, so I don't have any comments beyond that.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our meeting for tonight.